Hey everybody, it is 3 o'clock on the West Coast. It's 6 o'clock on the East Coast. Welcome again to another edition of Taking Your Pitch to the Next Level. My name is Carlo Gonzalez-Moss. I'm the CEO of a company called Moranti Media. If you've been joining me for the last 6 weeks, you already know that, but let me give you the quick spiel while everybody starts filtering into the room and everything. Moranti Media is a company focused and all about the world of pitching. We do pitch decks, we do pitch coaching, everything under the sun related to pitching and nothing else. That's been the focus of my career over the last few years. And that's what we're talking about here in this class. If you're interested in either pitch coaching or having us maybe build a pitch deck for you, feel free to reach out to me at Carlo Moss across all forms of social media and at Moranti.com. There's a contact form on there if you want to work with us, or also if you have any questions about the stuff that we talked about today or just about pitching in general. Feel free to reach out. I'm an open book. I love to talk about this stuff. There's a reason why once a week I come on here and talk for an hour straight all about pitching. Today, in thinking about taking your pitch to the next level, we're going to be talking about the topic of pitching with partners. This is the 6th week of our 7-week course. Next week is our final week. At the end of class day, we'll talk a little bit more about what the final week's going to be. We're going to encompass a whole bunch of different topics, but we're talking about pitching with partners today. A couple of things to get out before we dive into our main topic. Number one, this is a conversation. This is a two-way street. So ultimately, if you have questions, if you have comments, whether you're watching this on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're at, if you're watching it live, I keep an eye on the comments. And, if you have a question or something, we talk about it live on the air here. If you're watching this on demand or you're watching this later, still go ahead, leave a comment because I always go through, check all the comments and questions to see if there's anything interesting there that we can talk about in a future episode. So today, week 6, we're talking about pitching with partners, but as we always do, let's review what we talked about last week. Last week was all about the performance of the pitch. Now, when we talk about performance, what are the specific things we're talking about? We're talking about the way that you speak. Are you monotone or are you dynamic and animated in your vocal range? We also talked about the eye contact that you make. Are you using a whole bunch of different facial expressions to actually breathe life into the words that you're speaking? Or are you kind of just dead eyeing directly into the camera like this, reading every word off of the page? And whether you're in the room or you're on a Zoom, are you making eye contact with the other people? Or do you have your head buried so far in your script or even on the floor that the other people can't even connect with you at all? On top of that, we also talked about your physical mannerisms and your posture. Are you stiff, rigid, or uncomfortable? Or are you animated, moving around, excited to share this amazing thing that you created? Huh? We also talked about your connection to the material. If you're pitching a comedy, are you setting up your jokes and delivering your punchlines the right way? It's a thriller. You're putting us in the excitement of the moment where we're dying to see what happens next. And then we also talked about your speed of delivery. We talked about understanding the fact that this is a fucking nerve-wracking situation. Of course, you're going to be nervous. Of course, your emotions are going to go up. And when that happens, so does the speed of your speech. One of my most common notes to clients, I told you this last week, it's to slow down, usually by like 25%. And then finally, in terms of performance, we talked about your breath. If you find yourself racing through your pitch, it's probably because you're not using your breath properly. And that's one of the quickest ways to slow down a hyperspeed pitch is just to breathe. On top of that, it gives you an air of confidence in everything, your material, yourself, and the moment. And then we also hit on rehearsal, the thing that I hit more than anything else. Practice, practice, practice. Every single one of these elements of performance are only elevated if you rehearse. No matter what level of a performer you are, rehearsal is the key to improving it all. And then we dug into a few of my performance pet peeves. We talked about vocal fry and uptalk and having words and phrases that keep going up like this, and how, if you do that for the entirety of a pitch, that everyone is going to tune you out. So avoid that. We also talked about passive voice, or what I call tech bro voice, where you're just talking slow and you want to make sure everyone knows that like you're too smart and too cool for all of this. And so ultimately, like whatever. If you pass on it, you pass on it. But I'm an expert in everything, and I sound really smart because I don't care about anything. And how that's the worst way to pitch because, oh my God, why am I going to buy something from you that you're not even excited about? Also, we talked about the music and the rhythm of your pitch. No matter how dynamic of a pitcher or performer you are, we all got our crutches that we fall into. We all have our rhythms that we fall back on. And if your voice follows the exact same predictable pattern over and over again, no matter how dynamic it is, yeah, people are going to tune it out if it's the same thing over and over again. And so I gave you a few different exercises and also walked you through them of how to break your rhythm crutches. First, we talked about the speed through, where you run through your pitch as fast as humanly possible. I tell my pitchers, like, I don't care if I understand you, don't care if it's good, just get through it as quick as possible. Second was the kids' book exercise, where you run through the pitch like you're delivering to a group of kindergartners on a big, bright story rug, where everything is as big as possible, way over the top, even to the point of making all your partners break. It's just ridiculous and fun and dumb and silly. And then finally, the character wheel, where each section or each paragraph, you deliver the pitch as a different character with a different accent. Doesn't matter if they're good or not. In fact, it's better if they're not. All of these just serve to break you out of the rhythm of your pitch. So that was last week. This is this week. Today, we're talking about pitching with partners, which, as you grow in your career, is going to become more and more of a common occurrence because I can already envision, the people who are on the other end of this, listening to this, going like, I write by myself. Like, I'm like, I don't really need this advice. Trust me. As you grow in your career, you will almost always have somebody else in the room on your team that you're working with. And so it's vitally important to understand exactly how to work with partners on all levels when it comes to pitching. Very rarely are you going to be in a room all by yourself pitching, especially as you grow and progress in the industry. Now, when you first start pitching, yeah, there's plenty of times where you're going to be pitching by yourself. For instance, if you're pitching a potential rep, or maybe when you're first kind of on the come up and you're being introduced to all the different execs around town, yeah, those might be solo pitch scenarios. However, as your career progresses, more and more you're going to find others in the room on your team while you're pitching. So it's important to know how to play well with others. So before we dive into like the how of it, let's talk about the different people that you're going to be most commonly pitching with. It's a quick list. It's a list that will probably sound familiar to a lot of you if you've been joining me for these classes because, it's the same type of people who are giving you notes. We start, of course, with writing partners. This is the first thing that we think of when I say pitching with a partner. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? You and one or two other people, you wrote a script together, or maybe you developed an idea together. And so, of course, you're all going to be sharing the heavy lifting of the pitch together. We're going to dig into this one in a moment because this is going to be the main focus of our class today. But first, let's walk through the other folks that you might also be pitching with. Next is producers and studios, then agents and managers, assistants, talent attachments. So those are the big groups that you're going to be pitching with. It could be potentially your partners. So before we dig into the writing partners, let's talk about producers and studios. So as we've discussed before, a whole bunch of times, you'll take on a producing partner or maybe a studio who is going to set up your pitches for you, make all the calls to the different networks, get everything set, and they're going to leverage their reputation and their network to get you into rooms you wouldn't otherwise be able to, right? They're going to be able to make calls with execs that they've already made deals with and go, hey, we've got a new show. We want to bring it in. Let's set a pitch. Here are dates for availability. They might also be able to finance pitch materials like a pitch deck, an in-room presentation, character designs if it's an animated show, stuff along those levels. They're going to have at least one person in the room with you during your pitch. They have an investment in this as well. It might be a monetary investment. You might just have a shopping agreement. But if this thing sells, everyone involved is going to make money and they are a partner with you. So it's in their best interest to at least have one exec from their side in the room with you. Now, that exec is usually just going to be there to introduce you and then will ultimately leave the heavy lifting of the pitch to you. All they're doing is table setting for you. they will the executive specifically that's in the room with you is probably either going to have an existing relationship with the network execs that you're pitching to, or at the very least, they'll have had some level of conversation over email in setting the pitch and getting them excited. That's part of their job, is to get the person on the other side excited even before the pitch, right? They're sending over materials, they're giving them log lines, telling them all of the things that they think are really special about this show and why they should even take the meeting. All right. So they're the ones who are going to be there at the beginning saying, after all the small talk, being like, all right, shall we get started? That was when I was working for the Russo brothers running development for their animation company. That was my job a lot of times on pitches, is I'd be that first person who was kind of overseeing everything, guiding us, figuring out when the small talk is dying down and we're ready to go to the pitch. And one of the main jobs of that executive, that representative for the producer or the studio who is your partner, one of their main jobs is to sing your praises. When you first start working together, they're probably going to ask you for some sort of bio, maybe a list of credits, all that kind of stuff that's going to help them sing your praises. So my exhortation to you, the creator, help them do their job well. Nothing is more annoying to an exec than a creator who doesn't give me the things I need to make them look good. Like, I'm trying to hype you up. Help me. If you're watching this and you don't have a standard bio saved on your computer right now that you're constantly updating with your new credits, pause this video, go make one now. You should have whether it's a Word document, a notes app, whatever, you should have a paragraph that is your standard bio that when somebody reaches out and says, hey, can we get a bio? You can send it right off to them. Have that done and ready so that every time you're asked for it, you don't have to write a new one and constantly tweak it. One paragraph, that's it. It's something that people are always going to be asking you for as you grow your career. So save yourself the headache of having to write a new one every time. And for the love of God, when a partner asks you for this, please be a good partner. Don't make them hunt you down and ask repeatedly for it. It gets so annoying because it's such a simple thing that you should already have ready in your back pocket. Be a good partner. Equip them with the things that they need to make you look good, And with that in mind, know what's special about you. Know what your brand is, know what needs to be highlighted. Don't just expect your partners to hunt down your IMDb and figure out what the highlights are for you. Tell them you are the greatest expert on yourself. Equip them to do their jobs well, especially when their job is making you look good, Don't tell them how to write their intro, but understand that you're the biggest expert on you. If you've won awards, if you have some impressive credits, or you have something that makes you specially equipped to tell the story, let them know. Don't make them guess and don't make assumptions they already know something they might not. For instance, for me personally, you'd better believe that anytime I'm pitching, the person introing me is going to mention that I have 1 million subscribers on YouTube and that I was a development exec for the Russo brothers. Like, those are things that are going to be in my bio and I'm going to make sure get highlighted. And then on top of that, being a good partner also means providing them with all of your hard materials for the pitch in a timely manner, either right before the pitch or right after the pitch, and volunteering any materials that you have that might be useful. The things we're talking about are like your pitch deck, in-room presentation, like a PowerPoint or a keynote, any relevant stats, a headshot if they need it. All of that stuff should be provided to them in a timely manner. And then also, leaning into your creativity. If there's anything specifically that you can equip them with that's going to help them do their job, do it. I'm going to share an image that I used with my partners that I gave them when we were out pitching Most Popular Girls back in the day. Most Popular Girls in School, that was my YouTube series that we took out as a TV pitch. Let me see if I can go ahead and share this image with you of this was a PDF document that I would give to all of my, oh, we got a whole bunch of tech problems. Hold on one sec. Might not be able to show this after all. This was a fun difference from Zoom. So I'm going to bring this up, but basically it's a rundown of here are all of the relevant stats about Most Popular Girls. You can send this along to every network that we pitch to. All right, so we're going to bring it up, hopefully. Give me one sec. No, it's not going to let us. Anyway, it's a one-page PDF, real pretty, real nice. That just showcases all the demographics, everything that we talk about. Of like, here are the number of views. Here is 75% female viewership, all put together in a pretty picture on a PDF that they can either draw from when they're talking, or that they can also send along to networks either before or after. So make sure that you have all of those hard materials in hand and sent over to your partners in a very timely manner, preferably before the pitch or right after. Then, in terms of the producers in the studios, make sure that you know how to take the handoff from them. Once the exec finishes their spiel, they're talking all about how great you are. You should be able to take the lead of the pitch seamlessly. It might be like a very gracious, oh, thank you for the kind words. It might be a little joke about how flattering it was to hear all of that and how everything they just said was a total lie and thanks. But something that continues the flow of the pitch, puts a smile on everybody's face, and puts you in a position to succeed while transitioning all of us into talking about the show. It's great if you can rehearse everything in its entirety with the exec intros and all, but don't count on it. I mean, they might not be able to put their intro together until right before the pitch. So if it happens and you're able to rehearse it with everybody and the intros and everything, so you can practice your handoffs and everything, great. But don't count on it. One outlier situation to be aware of: if you have a project where the studio or the producer has a particular specialty that's going to be additive to the pitch, it can be useful to carve out a section of the pitch for them and build it into your rehearsals. For example, if you're pitching an animated show and you want to have the exec from the studio, because it's an animation studio, speak about the particular visual style of the show, build that into your pitch. Utilize your partner's strengths. Obviously, I work a lot in animation. So, for example, if I'm pitching something with Starburns, I usually am going to carve out some time for one of the execs from Starburns to not just intro me, but to also be a part of the pitch and talk about what they're going to bring to the visual style of the show, because that's their specialty. So that's the outlier situation where a producing partner or a studio isn't just going to intro you, but is also going to be an actual part of the pitch. Um, the next group that we're going to talk about that are going to be pitching with you, it's going to be a partner, might be your reps, your agents, or your managers. Oftentimes, especially if you don't have a studio attached, your reps are going to join in and they're going to be the ones to introduce you. They're going to build off of the connection that they have at the network, and they might just be like a little bit of social lubrication to help the meeting go smoothly. It can always be a little bit of an awkward thing if you're just dropped in there cold with execs that you've never met before. And agents and managers are great at being that middleman who can set everything up and kind of introduce you, sing your praises. Again, anybody that's talking before you in a pitch, one of the big things that they're supposed to do is hype you up. They are supposed to sing your praises so that you don't have to sit there and be the asshole talking about how great you are. You get to be humble and just focus on the story that you've created and lean into the show that you want to make while they talk about how great you are. Because let's be real, nobody really wants to hear us talk about how great we are. Like, that person kind of sucks. And everything that applies to your exec partners, that also applies to your reps. Know how to take the handoff. Make sure that you're equipping them with everything that they need to tell the story of you as best as they possibly can. And your reps and the exec partners are also your eyes and ears in a pitch when it comes to the other side of the table, especially on Zoom. They're the ones who are watching everyone else's camera, right? They're going to arrange like the stack on their Zoom so they can look at all of the execs that are being pitched to, right? They're going to read, they're like, ooh, he looks really interested. Ooh, he really responded to this line. Or, oh, she loved that joke. Like, lean into that. And that's going to give you really good, tangible feedback for the rest of your pitches on your pitch tour, right? So they're the ones watching everyone else's camera so that you can focus on the pitch. They're watching to see how the buyers are responding. Who's laughing? Who looks interested? Who looks disinterested? Was there a moment when we hit an energetic cliff and everybody started thinking about lunch? They're going to know that. That's part of their job. Then they'll be able to let you know afterwards, so you don't have to worry about any of that while you're talking. While you're talking, You can just focus on your pitch, one track mind, focus on what's important. Another person that might be in the room pitching alongside you, not technically pitching alongside you, but they'll be there, are assistants. You might have an assistant in the room that either works for you. If so, good job. Congrats on this success. You got your own assistant. That's awesome. Or more likely, it's an assistant from one of your studio partners. This person's job is just going to be to set up the Zoom, handle all the technical stuff, track down any missing members of the team, and if you need to, maybe run the PowerPoint or keynote for you. Other than that, they're not expected to talk or even be on camera. They're just the facilitators. So, you don't have to worry about them being an active part of the pitch. And if you can't pitch and run the PowerPoint by yourself, don't worry. That's okay. That's a lot to do to simultaneously be like, I'm reading here, I'm reading here, I'm keeping track of this animation, I'm doing this. That's a lot of chewing gum and walking at the same time. So don't fret, ask for help. Don't try to take everything on if you can't do it. Ask for help. There's if you have a producer partner or a studio partner, they definitely have assistants who can run that PowerPoint for you. That's one of the reasons why you made a deal with one of these big companies for access to resources like that. Regardless, though, if you are using a PowerPoint or a keynote, make sure that it's crystal clear, who's in charge of running it in the room, whether it's you, whether it's somebody from your team or an assistant from the other side, and make sure if it's not you that you have rehearsed with them. Running a keynote and a PowerPoint, like, it's an easy way for everything to go to shit if you're not prepared. So make sure that you have rehearsed with them. Next group of pitching partners might be talent attachments. We're talking about, you sell a show, maybe you've got, you were lucky enough to land a big name actor or actress. Awesome. Everybody loves a celebrity. So if you have a bankable talent attached to your project, congratulations. That's a huge advantage for you, and it makes the show that much more likely to sell. And odds are, if somebody famous is going to be on a pitch call, it's going to attract more eyeballs and bigger decision makers from the network you're pitching to, right? If you're working with an attached talent, though, keep in mind that their time is going to be very limited, especially in the run up to your pitch. So as you build your pitch, make it clear to them that you want them to be as involved as their schedule will allow. It can be a really delicate dance, but as with all things, communication is key. Because some talent, they might have the time, or they might just feel really passionate about the project. So they're going to want to be really involved in the process, which is great. Well, for others, it's going to be a huge relief for you to take the lead. So, like, ultimately, you just need to be communicative with your partners and let them know, like, hey, I want you to be a part of this, but if you don't have the time, we're going to put you in a position to succeed. The only way that you can find this out is by being open and honest with your communication. For me, I've had pitches with celebrity attachments where we were able to have weeks and weeks of rehearsals together. And I've also had ones where we didn't meet until we were actually going into the pitch. And both scenarios, it worked out just fine because we were communicative with each other and they knew what the expectations were of them going in. In all of the cases, we were very, very prepared about what the expectations for everybody involved was going into the pitch. And that celebrity that we were working with felt taken care of. If you've had limited rehearsals with your attachment, make sure that you are making it very clear when you're passing the ball to them. Use clear leading phrases that make it clear that it's their turn to talk, because they're usually going to be pretty careful about not stepping on your toes, especially if you're the creator. If they haven't been an active part of the creative process and are more of an actor or EP attachment, their role in the pitch can be a lot more focused on what specifically drew them to the project and what excites them about it. That way, all of the nitty gritty storytelling and world building can be left up to you, and everybody looks great in that situation. And if you have an attachment like this, lean into it as an advantage that you have. Let them do what they're great at. Don't hamstring a charismatic star with too much scripting or with not enough to do. I mean, speaking from experience, it is actually pretty amazing to see in a room when that star turns on their charm and you're sitting there going like, oh shit, yeah, that makes sense why they are a friggin' movie star. It's unbelievable. And so when you put them in that position to succeed, then everyone gets to benefit from it. And a quick note just about pitching with partners and studios and reps and everybody in general. Do not let your room get too overloaded with people, especially on a Zoom. Good execs will usually be pretty proactive about this, but if they're not, you may have to be. Look, pitches are fun, they're exciting. Everybody wants to be on that call. They want to see what happens, they want to be there in the moment. The only people that should really be on the call, though, are people that are speaking and adding something substantive to the pitch. People like to be a part of the pitches because they're fun and exciting, but not everyone who participates in the preparation for the pitch. Oh, it's a lot of alliteration. Love it. Not everybody who participates in the preparation of the pitch needs to be in the actual pitch, though. It can be confusing to to be a buyer if there's all these random people on a call or in a room who don't say anything or add anything to the pitch. You're like, is this an assistant? Is this somebody who wrote on the show? They didn't get an intro. They're not talking. I have no idea who this person is. It's that little thing in the back of your head that pulls attention from what should be the focus of your pitch. And so it throws up some serious red flags, and it can be overwhelming and intimidating to a buyer, and not in a good way. You always want the pitch room on your side to be as lean as possible, kept only to the essentials. On the other side, there's a whole bunch of people in there. Sweet, I got an audience. Let me show off what I can do. But from your point of view, from your side, keep it as lean as possible as much as you can. Each company that's represented in the room should have one person representing them and no more. Now, let's look at the big focus, pitching with your writing partners. So, we're about halfway through this class. This is going to be the majority of the rest of the class today, pitching with your writing partners. So, we know the scenario here. You guys all developed this idea together. Maybe it's one of you, two. It's definitely not one of you. Maybe it's two of you, maybe it's three of you. It's probably not more than that. If it's more than that, you might need to cull down exactly who's in the pitch. But here are my key tips for pitching with partners. For reference sake, I have pitched with partners for years. It's definitely like the majority of my projects, I'm usually writing with other people. It's only in the last couple of years that I started writing projects on my own again. So I have most of my experience in the pitch room, it comes pitching with partners. So number one, lean into everybody's strengths. Figure out what everybody is good at, what their skill set is, and let them lean into that. Some people are going to be better at landing jokes. Other people might be better at walking through the story, so on and so forth. When you're working with a partner or partners, it's really important to play to everyone's strengths. Don't just divvy up the speaking roles blindly and roll from there because you don't want to step on anyone's toes or act like somebody's better at something than somebody else. Guess what? It's true. Some people are better at other things than other people. Identify what your skill set is, lean into that. For instance, when I'm pitching with one of my writing partners, Mark, I'll do a lot more voices. I'll drop into this, or I'll do different characters to sound like this. Or I might have a conversation with two different characters who are, just going back and forth with each other, because that's where my skill set lies. Like that's what I do well. Whereas Mark is going to take more of the hard setup punchline type jokes. He can hit those out of the park better than I can. So we're going to lean into our strengths in that way. Be generous with compliments and encouragement. Recognize when your partner has a line that they hit just right, or if their adjustment to a line really made everything sing. Tell them that. Like that's huge. When you get to the end of like a rehearsal or even at the end of a pitch, and you just go, "Hey man, just really wanted to let you know that one line," because usually what happens in that situation is like we brace ourselves because we're going to get a note, we're going to get something that we did poorly. If you just sit there and you go, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that one line, you killed that." Like I don't know if you tweaked it a little bit or something, but that really landed well. They're gonna be able to walk up a little bit more spring in their step. Similarly, don't be afraid to speak up if something isn't working. I see that happen a lot of times in group pitches where like nobody wants to call anybody out. Everybody kind of just wants to hold back, and the pitch stays pretty stagnant and doesn't grow the way that it needs to. Remember a few weeks ago, we talked about the fact that a pitch should be treated as a living, breathing, organic thing. So don't be afraid to speak up if something isn't working. Be tactful. Do your best not to personalize the critique. I would say phrase it along the lines more of like, I'm still bumping on this one aspect as opposed to your line here isn't working or you're doing a bad job or this thing that you're saying doesn't make any sense or it sucks, right? Be tactful, but don't hold back when you need to speak up about something. Our next point, figure out what the format and flow of your pitch is going to be. Is it going to be ping pong or is it going to be basketball? It's a little metaphor that I came up with. We'll see if it tracks. All right. But a basketball pitch is one where there's a clear point guard, right? There's a clear person who's dribbling the ball up and then passing to each of the team members, right? They're the facilitators. So they're going to be doing a lot of the talking. They're going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And then they pass the ball over here, pass the ball over here to each of the partners, making sure that they're really getting their chance to shine, right? A point guard in basketball, they dribble the ball up and then everybody else can go get set up in their position. Point guard's going to find them. They're the one in charge, but they're more than anything there to provide assists. They're there to make everybody else look spectacular. And so this type of pitch works best if one member of the team is maybe a much more experienced pitcher than everybody else, or if one member of the team has a lot more ownership of the story and the creative. Like if you created a concept for a show and then brought in some additional writers or brought in some additional creative help on the production side, something. But it's important in this type of pitch that regardless of what the setup is, that the point guard, the point person, not hog the ball too much. If you're that point guard, you need to create opportunities for the other members of the team to look great. Pass the ball, set up your teammates with clear transitional lines, and give them opportunities to shine with the best lines, the best sections, the best jokes. You don't want to come off looking like this is one person's ego trip and they just have like their little tag along assistant along for the ride. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you got what I call a ping pong pitch. That's more of the traditional partner pitch that we think of, where everyone's pretty much sharing the load equally and the ball bounces back and forth between the pitchers, right? You say you got this section, I got this section. You got this line, I got this line. You're going to set this up, I'm going to knock it out of the park, right? In a pitch like this, what's vitally important is your connective tissue so that every time you hand the pitch to your partner, it's seamless and natural. In a pitch like this, you want to be able to use a lot of transitional phrases. So things like, if a section just ends instead of it just ending, you bring in the next section with all that being said, let's talk about the characters. Or now that we've established the characters, let's jump into some episodes. Or that person should set you up with, and that takes us to Carlo, take it away. Stuff like that. Clear transitional statements so everything feels seamless and natural. We want everything to feel like it's happening in the moment as much as possible. So we don't want that kind of staccato rhythm where it's like, and now this section is done. Okay, here are characters. Ba da 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 da. Let it be elegant. Let it be a little bit musical. Lean into it. Feel it. Let's talk now about rehearsal when it comes to pitching with a partner. It's absolutely vital. As we know, I hit it over and over again. I'm a broken record about it, but especially when it comes to partner pitches, rehearsal is vital because there's a rhythm and a flow that you're going to need to develop in order to present the best pitch possible. Rehearse together aside from scheduled rehearsals with your producers or the studio. If you and your partner have a deal set up, say at Sony, and you're going to go pitch all the networks and everything, don't leave your rehearsals to just when you're working with Sony. You need to be rehearsing on the side, making your own appointments, setting your own calendars, whether it's once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever. But you need to be working together outside of those big meetings. And then on top of that, rehearse your own lines on your own ahead of your rehearsals with your partner. So y'all should be building the pitch together. You've established everything. But then after you rehearse together, you need to rehearse on your own because a lot of times you just need to spend the time by yourself getting into the nitty gritty of how something sounds. I am so much better in a partner pitch if I've taken the time to really get into the fine details of my lines and how they sound before I go into a rehearsal with my partners. And when you're rehearsing with your partners, my recommendation, set aside 2 hours per rehearsal. That's going to give you an opportunity to run through your pitch at least twice and also gives you plenty of time to walk through individual sections and to brainstorm changes. I'd say you can go up to 3 hours, but don't go beyond that because you're going to hit a wall pretty quick when it comes to rehearsing pitches. And it ends up being an issue of diminishing returns. So 2 hours for me is usually the sweet spot, especially if we're like, rehearsing over Zoom. Um, at about 2 hours, I get pretty gassed out, and I've seen that happens with most people. But that gives you enough time to hit it at least twice, get into the fine details of each section, and then still feel excited about it because you don't want to burn yourself out on the material. When working with a partner, don't hang your partner out to dry. You should also be tweaking and reworking your lines. Sometimes getting the lines requires really getting into the nitty gritty. And ultimately, you guys are in this together. So you focus on yourself, they focus on themselves. And then when you get in the room together, you are a team. So do not hang them out to dry. So mistakes happen all the time, and technology can always fail us. Your partner in the middle of a sentence might drop off of the call. Are you ready for that? Don't just sit there and be like, I don't know what happened. You should be able to jump seamlessly into the pitch and keep things going. Or if your partner skips a section or their connection drops off or they're struggling for some reason, maybe their kid is crying in the other room, their cat's choking on something off camera, step in and have their back. You guys are a team. You can either take the lines, maybe set up a cue of what they're supposed to say if they missed something. This is when a written script comes in really handy, because you have it right in front of you. You can be like, oh, okay, that's where they skipped or that's where they left off. I can jump right in. I know how they said this because we rehearse it all the time. We know this like the back of our hand. Again, rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. But above all, be a team player. You'll all be able to pitch with so much more confidence knowing that no matter what, someone always has your back. It's a really incredible feeling when you're the person who drops the ball, whether through your fault or through complete just like circumstances of technology getting the better of you, and somebody picks you up. That feels awesome to be like, oh, okay, we're good. Like I don't have to worry about doing this all myself. Also, in thinking about that partner relationship, be prepared to raise the energy level if you need to. Oftentimes in pitches, somebody might just be a bit off their game. It's up to you, their teammate, to A, not get dragged down by that, and B, bring the energy level of everyone involved back up. If they're lagging, it's up to you to keep everything alive and create an energy level that they can match. Be that kind of energetic encouragement to your partner of like, I'm going, I'm here. I don't know what's going on with you, but I got you. Let's go. Let's bring this energy level up. And most of the time, they'll match that. Where you can get into trouble is if for some reason your partner starts things off a little bit soft, they're a little bit low energy, and then that catches you and you get in your head of like, what the fuck's going on with them? And you start blaming them. You start getting pissed at them. Or you start questioning yourself. You start wondering, or you feel self-conscious because they're too low energy and you feel like you're way, way, way up here. Allow yourself to create that level of energy that they can match. Let them come up to your level. You got to pick them up. You're a team here. And then when it comes to answering the executive questions, you're going to be answering these together. And this can oftentimes be a little bit of a difficult dance. All right. So avoid being too polite with each other. I see this happen a lot with, like, especially with inexperienced pitchers. You don't want to step on each other's toes. You want to make sure everybody gets a shot. And so what ends up happening is an exec asks a question. Everyone on the team knows the answer, but you don't necessarily want to be like, I know, I know, I know. And so then there's this prolonged silence where it sounds like, oh, did I just like really throw them? It's better to get an answer out than to have a question hang in silence while everyone tries to figure out who's going to talk, because that silence says, oh shit, we don't have a good answer. Yeah, hold on one second while we come up with some bullshit to say. Right. So feel free to jump in on the front of those questions if you have an answer and be quick. Like, definitely prefer jumping on someone's toes over having that hang in silence. That being said, if you're pitching with partners, please, please, please avoid being the person that answers every question. You got to be a team player. And if you're listening to this and those 2 points I just made sound kind of contradictory, it's a delicate balance. It's a dance. But you got to be a team player and you got to give your partners the opportunity to jump in with answers as well. And this goes especially doubly true for men because it's a huge red flag for me as an exec if I see a man who feels the need to answer every question ahead of his partners. It is a huge red flag of like, I don't know if that's the type of person that we want to work with who just goes, I know, shut up. Everybody shut up. I'm the straight white man and I know all the answers. I've got this. Right. So be a team player in every sense of the word. Give your partners the opportunity to shine. Now, feel free to piggyback off of one of your partner's answers, but only if it's additive, as in there's something important that they might have missed. If you're just restating or reiterating the point that they just made, there's no point to saying something. Be honest with yourself. You might just like the sound of your own voice, and you might just think that you're a little bit too smart if you feel the need to answer every question or to add on to everything that your partners say. Remember that the point that I made early on in this class about speaking in sound bites. If you can answer questions succinctly and clearly with a period on it, whoo, that's gold. That that conveys so much confidence and such a clear vision of your show. It goes miles for an exec. But if you feel the need to tag everything that one of your partners says with your own restatement, it conveys a lack of confidence in your work and that need to be understood. That anxiety that we have of like, oh my God, I don't think you get this. I don't think you get this. Let me restate it because I'm very good at stating things and making you feel like you can understand. All right. So feel free to piggyback off of your partner's answers, but only if it's additive. Not everyone needs to speak in response to each question. My ideal situation is if I'm pitching with partners and we get a question, one person knocks it out of the park and we're on to the next one. That's ideal. That's what you want. So only piggybacking if it's additive. Next point, when it comes to that Q&A, do not, oh, for the love of God, interrupt your partners. And if you do, which happens, look, especially on Zoom, it happens, apologize and let them finish. You know, you might be really excited about your point or something like that. Happens, especially on Zoom. It's fine, but it can be really uncomfortable on the other side watching someone get interrupted by their own partner with no regard. Just like, yeah, shut up, I got this. It really, really raises red flags and makes the entire room uncomfortable, especially if it happens multiple times. And we as executives, we see a lot of pitches. And so we can identify that real quick. And it, like I said, it raises a lot of red flags about this creator. And remember, all of this is essentially a job interview. And if it seems like you two don't know how to work well together, it brings into question whether we should hire you. There's a lot of money at stake. And if you can't even work well together on a pitch, then what confidence can I have that you're going to work well together after I give you a few $1,000,000 to make a TV show? So please, please, please do not interrupt your partners. You guys are a team. You're in this together. Now, I'm thinking about exec questions. Identify ahead of time if there are certain topics that one partner might be better suited to talk about. For instance, when I'm working with my writing partner, Mark, we know that if we get a production question or a budget question, those are his. He's going to jump in on those. He makes he'll get really excited. And so you like lean into that aspect of your preparation where you can go, okay, if it's this question, why don't you take that? Or perhaps somebody has a really well formulated response. Then we know, okay, if we get this question, you're going to take the lead on that. This is also why it helps to plan out the possible questions that you might get and to then practice your response to them. If you remember when we talked about rehearsal, that's a huge component of your rehearsal is sitting down and going, all right, what are the questions that we might get here? Oh, well, they might ask us about this. Or setting up questions in your pitch, right? Giving just enough information so that an exec is going to ask you about it afterwards. But doing that in your preparation is going to allow you to not have that awkward dance of who should talk, who should speak. And then let's look at after the pitch. So after the pitch, be communicative with your partners. It always helps to have a quick debrief to check in with how everyone felt it went. And if there's anything that needs to be adjusted before the next pitch, just a quick call. You can either have it scheduled or you just give your partner a ring. Again, it's a great time to point out specific things that you really liked about what your partner did. They're fresh in your mind. Keep those in your mind and go, oh, this section, I thought that was the best that you've ever done it. Stuff like that goes such a long way. What worked really well for them in here? This type of encouragement goes such a long way in building the confidence required to be successful in the pitch room. We talked last week about how so much of the importance of the pitch is in confidence, is in walking in there, believing that you're going to sell a friggin' TV show. That's a huge thing. And you need to be walking in there confident. And so if you're building up your partner with things that they did well, that they might not be aware of because they're so dialed in the moment, that's going to go a huge way in them walking into that pitch room with confidence and in the two of you or three of you ultimately selling your show. And finally, if the pitch didn't go well, or if the show didn't sell, please do not start pointing fingers. Do not start blaming each other. If you have more pitches on your schedule, by all means, work together to figure out how you can make it better. But the last thing that someone needs at this moment is to be told that the failure was all their fault. Hindsight's always 2020. So don't try to shirk your accountability by dumping on your partner. Y'all are in this together. That means that you succeed together, and ultimately sometimes you got to fail together. And so don't sit there going like, if we had just done this, if you hadn't have fucked that up, then we would have sold the show. That serves nobody and that does nothing aside from take accountability off of you and put it completely on the other person. So don't point fingers, don't blame each other. So that is the entirety of our talk about pitching with partners. Like I said, it is the thing that you are going to be doing more often than pitching by yourself. There's almost always going to be somebody else on your team in the room. So, quick little review before we get out of here today. We talked about the different types of people that you're going to be pitching with, the types of partners that you're going to have. We talked about your writing partner. We talked about producing partners in studios. We talked about your reps, talked about the assistants that you might have in the room, talent attachments, and then ultimately we dug hard into what to do when you're pitching with your partner. One of the big points that we hit, lean into the skill sets, lean into what y'all are good at. Then we talked about figuring out what the format of your flow and what the format and flow of your pitch is going to be. Is it ping pong or is it basketball? If you're the point guard, you better be good at passing to your teammate. If it's a ping pong pitch, make sure that everyone is focused on that connective tissue so everything feels seamless. Then we talked about rehearsal. The key thing to all pitches is rehearsal, especially partner pitches. And to make sure that you rehearse on your own, that you rehearse with your partners, and you're rehearsing with your production and studio partners. My recommendation was 2 hours per rehearsal, setting that aside. And then when working with your partner, you should be tweaking, reworking your lines on your own, and then focusing on not hanging out your partner to dry. If there's a mistake, somebody stumbles for whatever reason, being very careful to have their back always in every situation. Y'all are in this together, and being prepared to raise the energy level if you need to. And then finally, we dug into those exec questions, avoiding being too polite with each other, making sure you don't step on anybody's toes. Fuck all that noise. Get the answer out. Confidence, confidence, confidence. While at the same time, making sure that you're not the person who's answering every question. That person in a pitch room friggin' sucks. And then when you're piggybacking off of your partner's answers, making sure that it's only additive, that you're not just trying to hear the sound of your voice and not interrupting your partners. That's a huge point that I made. I want you to remember that. If you interrupt your partners, say sorry, let them finish. That goes a long way in being the type of person that, that we want to work with as execs. And then identifying ahead of time if there are certain topics that one person would be better suited to, so you don't have to question who's going to jump in on a question. And then lastly, we talked about after the pitch, being communicative with your partners, having a debrief call after each pitch, and more than anything, identifying things that they're doing well, encouraging them so that you can build their confidence, and then they're going to do the same thing for you. And then finally, if the pitch didn't go well or it didn't sell, don't point fingers and don't blame each other. If you got more pitches on your schedule, totally cool to work together and figure out what needs to be fixed. But the last thing you need is a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks being like, it was your fault. No, it was your fault. No, it was your fault. No, 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 no. You're in this together. You succeed together. You fail together. That's how this works. So I left a little bit of time here at the end because I want to talk about next week, which is our final class in this 7 week session. So ultimately, week 7, if y'all remembered my first class, week 7 was a live class at the actual Catalyst Festival. Yeah, we're still a ways out from the Catalyst Festival this year, so it's not going to be an in-person class. But for that class, I focused on my best tips for pitching. I was all my golden rules of pitching. And so I want to do something a little bit similar, but a little bit different for the final class next week. I would love to have any and all participation from your end in this. We've been talking about a lot of next level elements of the pitching process, from dealing with rejection, working with partners, the performance of the pitch, the mistakes that good pitchers make that great pitchers don't make, what separates a good pitcher from a great pitcher. We touched on a lot of topics. Ultimately, if there was something that you wanted to have covered that hasn't been covered yet, send me a comment. Either you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, leave a comment there. Reach out to me either on social media or at my website, moranti.com. Let me put it up right here, at Carlo Moss or moranti.com. Hit me up with your questions or a topic that you'd like to cover next week. I'm going to run you through a few of the different topics that we're going to be touching on. It's going to be, as I like to call it, a little pitching poo-poo platter of a bunch of different topics that go into taking your pitch to the next level. Some of the things we're going to walk through: the physical steps of building a pitch. When we say go in and make a pitch, what does that actually look like? What kind of document are you putting it in? How are you structuring it? What's that actual workflow like? When I sit down to build a pitch, what am I doing? We'll also be talking about the materials that you're coming in with and how to present them. I'm talking about things like pitch decks, one sheets, in-room presentations, which are keynotes, PowerPoints, all that kind of stuff. What are you coming in with? How are you presenting them? How are you using them to your advantage? Common questions that pop up is like, should I send a pitch deck before or after? What's a lead behind? All that kind of stuff. We're going to touch a little bit on that. And we're going to touch on my best practices for how to create those materials. Then we're also going to talk about the pitching process in terms of scheduling and touring networks. Who's in charge of sending those emails? How do those emails get sent? What should be your expectations as a creator? When do you need to raise your hand and go, this isn't going the way that it should? Or can we go to this network? Can we go to that network? Preparing yourself so that when you're going out to pitch networks, you know what's coming next, because your exec partners might think that you already know that information or just not as communicative as you need them to be. We're also going to talk about speaking in sound bites. Touched on that a little bit over the course of this class and our previous class. We're going to dig into that a little bit more because it's one of the most essential skill sets for good pitching. Being able to say a sentence, hit a point, put a period on it, and move on to the next. Then we're going to talk about other forms of pitching and how to talk about your projects when you're not in a pitch room. So other forms of pitching, right? The elevator pitch, how to formulate something that's quick, how to formulate something that might be 5 to 10 minutes. You're hanging out at a bar, talking to you happen to run into a producer or a network exec, and I ask you what you're working on. You're like, oh, I got this show, it's about this, this, and this. Figuring out what those different forms of pitching are and how to properly talk about your show in a way that's going to sell it, but that's not going to be overly sales pitchy, right? Because I love that 18 to 20 minutes that you get in the room. But in order to get there, you might be presented with other opportunities where you need to talk about your show properly. Some other topics we're going to touch on, and again, this is all, we got 60 minutes next week. We're going to touch on as many as we can, but I am going to put the priority on the topics that y'all send in, the questions that you ask. That's what we're going to hit first. But we're also going to talk about being the adult in the room or pitching on a project that's not yours. So, a younger creator might come to you and say, like, I want you to produce this. And you're going to be in the room pitching with them. What does that feel like? What's your responsibility? How do you build that intro that we were just talking about to hype up this creator? That's a skill set unto itself. We're also going to talk about how to take a pitch. As you continue to grow in this industry and as you continue to sell shows and take your pitches to the next level, you're going to start having stuff pitched to you. How do you do that? How do you do that well? When somebody comes in and they want to pitch you, what's the environment that you want to create in that pitch room? And then we'll also talk about building relationships with executives. How do you build a reputation with network executives that you pitch to over and over again so that when you walk into a room, whether it's an actual room or a virtual room, they're going, great. Oh, I love when I get to have a pitch from this person. I know I'm in for a ride. I'm looking forward to it. So those are all a bunch of topics that we're going to be digging into in our final week next week. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have anything that you want to know about the world of pitching, we got 1 week left in this course. I want to hear them. Reach out to me either on social media. I am at Carlo Moss, or you can reach out to me on my website, moranti.com. We have a contact form down at the bottom of the front page there. You reach out directly there. Or if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, leave a comment. I will be scanning those this week to make sure that any and all questions get addressed. Until then, we are up at the top of the hour. Thank you all so much for joining me. This has been one more episode of Taking Your Pitch to the Next Level. I will see you back here next week for our final class. Have a good one. Bye.